Hello everyone and God bless. This is Father Mikhail, Father Michael, with another episode of Living Orthodox, this time coming to you live from sunny Lethbridge, Alberta, where my family and I now live. And today we're going to be talking about the passion of anger. God bless everyone. Thank you for joining again for today for Living Orthodox and a discussion on the passion of anger. Before we begin, I just wanted to say a quick thank you to everyone who supported my family and I with the GoFundMe, who helped us to make it to this point and to move across Canada to this wonderful place to serve in this wonderful parish where we are doing our best to build it up and to serve the people of God. Being a rector now, of course, has many more responsibilities. I will still be doing my videos on a regular basis and releasing long content as well as shorter form 10-minute content like what I'm aiming for today. Might be a little longer, but we're going to try and keep it about 10 minutes. So with that said, please like, share, and subscribe, and let's get into the topic. So anger is something that plagues many, many people these days. Many young men, many young women. And a lot of this stems from, as Saint Paisios points out, a lack of the virtue of patience. So what can we do to overcome this? We get annoyed by things, right? We go to work, things annoy us. As he pointed out in Passions and Virtues, back in the day, a fly would come buzzing, you'd wave it off and it would fly away. Now the fly sticks around. We live in such a hyper-connected world with social media and with the internet, constantly being bombarded by news, by different narratives, by different ideologies, that it becomes really easy for us to lose track. It becomes very easy for us to lose sight of what matters. So what do we do to combat this? Well, as St. Paisios says, we have to stop and we have to look inward. St. Joseph the Hesychast also had spoken about this and said that when we are tempted to speak out, then this venomous snake, this passion of anger, coils in our stomachs and wants to come out through the throat and through the mouth. Some of us really burn up on the inside and we get heated. And a lot of this comes from an indignation or feeling like other people have somehow offended us or that we're insulted. And so a lot of the time, anger is truly rooted in pride. But St. Joseph tells us one of the best things to do is to choke that snake, to suffocate it by not giving it air. In other words, when you want to outburst and say something, hold your tongue. It seems really simple, really obvious, but it's not easy. There have been many ancient philosophers, even in the school of Stoicism, which of course has a lot of faults in it, but they've pointed out that one of the things we should do to not get angry is to remind ourselves that the person having their own errors and faults is no fault of their own necessarily, that they just maybe they don't know better. And so, as St. Paisios more wisely puts it, we have to justify them. So, where does annoyance come from, right? Well, annoyance, it does come from the passion of anger. Because a lot of the time we think, well, I just get annoyed. I don't really get angry. But annoyance comes from the passion of anger. And when one is not in a good spiritual state, they lack those virtues. They lack things like patience, vigilance, which vigilance really has to come first. We have to be able to know when we're approaching anger and how to handle it. And of course, forbearance, the ability to carry that cross in the moment and to struggle with it. The cause a lot of the time of our impatience and our anger is the belief that others are always at fault. Anger will come because of this at the slightest provocation. Somebody could do something wrong. Your kids could be screaming and crying. I know my wife and I deal with two kids who are still technically under the age of 2. Our oldest is about to turn 2, and they are the masters of testing patience. And sometimes parents, Orthodox parents, they'll bemoan and say, "Oh, why has God given me such a difficult child?" I know, honestly, I've been there myself at times. And it's because in all reality, it's to purify us. We only become good parents. We only become good Christians, people who truly exercise virtue, when that is tested. It's easy to talk about it. It's easy to read about it, to go, oh, wow, such spiritual wisdom. But when it comes to the moment of testing, many of us fail the exam. Many of us fail the litmus test. We always fail to uphold the very thing that we praise. And wouldn't it be better if we actually applied ourselves? So what do we understand further from this before we get to what is some good approach, some good medicine? Anger will often begin with negative thoughts that you have about other people. You know, one of the best things to do is to practice positive thoughts about them. As St. Paisios, again, in Passions and Virtues, which is kind of the main book that I'm focusing on with each of these talks, I'm going to start kind of focusing on a spiritual book or a counsel of an elder or saint. And, I'll also include links to it in the description so that you guys can go and read as well. And hopefully this will benefit you in some way. But one of the things he tells us to do is to engage in using positive thoughts, because positive thoughts help us to remove criticism. That criticism we have for others often comes from measuring them against ourselves, in which a lot of the time we're always at fault for thinking we are perfect or we've perfected something. And we haven't. Anger almost always includes justification, which also comes from pride. We think we're justified for being upset. Yes, we are justified for being upset what's happening in the world, with the LGBT barbecue agenda being foisted on our children in public schools, especially in places like Eastern Canada and throughout a lot of the large cities in the States. Here in Western Canada, thank God, I've noticed there's a little bit less of it. It's still present, of course. It's an agenda that's pushed everywhere, but it's still present. But we have to remember that we can't just get angry at these people because of their errors. We have to be angry at the error and pity the person. We have to have some mercy towards them and think, well, they don't know better. So how do we start teaching them better? By exemplifying virtue in ourselves. And even when it comes to things like that, well, we got to reject hedonism, because ultimately that's at the root, and we have to work on rooting out our own hedonistic tendencies and not be hypocrites. The other thing with anger is, besides coming from the justification, the pride, the impotence, really, a lot of that, again, just stems from how we see ourselves in relation to others. Certain professions can also have a harmful impact on our soul, on our well-being. They can turn a naturally calm person into a wreck, either into a boiling over, rage-filled mess, or they can turn someone into an absolute nervous wreck. There are professions where you're going to be tested, such as policing, firefighting, paramedics, nurses, doctors. Even if you're working in customer service in a store, you're constantly going to be tested. And if it's possible to go back to school and get another education, if it's possible for you to remove yourself from maybe that position or take another position, that's something you should examine, because at the end of the day, your soul is a far more long-term and permanent thing. It's not worth jeopardizing your peace, the state of your soul, your salvation, for a few extra bucks. It's just not worth it. So what do we do? How do we understand this? Well, not all anger is evil. Anger, as many Holy Fathers have pointed out, is something that God has given to us. But the difference is, anger should be directed in a form of indignation towards sin, towards the devil. We should get angry at the devil, as St. Joseph the Hesychast pointed out. Man, really, we have three causes to sin, three weaknesses. A lot of it is the demons, our own nature, and habit. If we're in the habit of sputtering off and getting angry, honking the horn and flipping off the guy who cut you off in traffic, or throwing a fit and criticizing everything around you, you're just going to stoke the fires of your own anger. You're just throwing more fuel onto it. But when we get indignant because we see, for example, apostasy, or when we see people in the church not honoring the law of God, not honoring the saints and the Holy Fathers, we must be indignant at the action. We have to forgive the person, but we can be indignant with the action. A lot of the time I'll get accused of things like being judgmental, because I'll say we can't pray with the heterodox because they don't properly confess Christ, or criticizing Protestantism or Nestorianism or Catholicism. But this isn't because I dislike the individuals in that religion. I love many people who are Catholic, many people who are Protestant. I'm still friends and family with. But I can't agree with them on the errors, because those errors lead to more errors. And then what happens? We're no longer worshiping in spirit and truth. We're worshiping in the spirit of humanism, of the European spirit, as St. Justin Popovich, or St. Houston Popovich always called it. But let's get to the final kind of aspect of this and how we manage this, how we overcome it. St. Paisios says we have to anticipate. So we have to become watchful. We have to be good at anticipating when we're getting angry, what makes us angry. And sometimes it truly is a matter of learning to be patient or forbearing, that before we open our mouth, as he said, we should maybe bring some light and say the Jesus prayer quietly to ourselves before we respond with something. Because when you outburst, how do you pick up the pieces? And as he put it, how do you burn them? You can't. Because sometimes those pieces lodge like shrapnel into another person, into another person's heart. It could be into your coworker. It could be into your fellow parishioner, your brother, your sister, if you're in the monastery, your brother or sister in life. It could happen just with an innocent person on the street who we should have love for and desire their salvation. It could even happen with our own children. We have to be careful that we don't just launch the shrapnel out there from our own explosive outbursts, popping off like a hand grenade when the pin's been pulled. We have to sometimes put the pin back in before we release the handle. We have to stop ourselves from losing it. And we can't control what other people say and do. We can't control how they react. We can control how we react. And that is a fruit of the Holy Spirit, in fact, self-control. So when we anticipate it, it's like St. Paisios said, it's like when we warm milk. For example, as a parent, I've had to warm milk for my children, and you do have to remove it from the heat before it boils over, before it spills out. And that's like our anger. When we're in a situation, and I've been bad for this myself, it's something I've had to perfect in my own life. When we're in a situation when we're being tempted to anger, we sometimes have to just pull back. We have to just remove ourselves from the situation. We have to walk away, go get some fresh air, take a quick break, and then we can come back to it. We have to be attentive. We have to keep watch. We have to contain our anger so that the passion doesn't become rooted in us. Because when we entertain the anger, when we talk ourselves into our anger, when we fester in it, it becomes rooted in us. And as St. Paisios said, then we're going to want to take an axe to remove the rootlets, even as Elder Ephraim has talked about with passions. But by then, in the words of St. Paisios, they sprout little suckers. They have these other little tendrils that get in there, and they're very hard to root out. As Elder Ephraim put it in The Art of Salvation, we have to then start removing these thorny rootlets with forceps, and they lacerate the heart as we tear from them. And it becomes harder and harder. Outbursts happen, of course, from lack of patience. But we also have to look upon others with goodwill. As I kind of mentioned a little bit earlier, we have to justify them with love. When the passion of anger comes, it will find a place in your heart occupied with love if you manage to do this. If you say, so-and-so did this because of this. It's not because they're at fault. I'm angry because of my own faults. Maybe what they did or said was wrong, but maybe I'm mad at them because of my own faults. Because even if we get mad at someone for an error, is it because we feel that they're challenging us intellectually? Or is it because we feel like they are challenging God, like they are pulling people away from the truth? Are we getting angry because we see the harm that the devil is causing a person, and thus we're angry at the devil for them? Or are we angry at them? These are questions we have to ask ourselves. And of course, one of the best things you can do aside from praying about this is to talk to your father confessor, who may be your local parish priest, or if you have a spiritual father, to confess your thoughts to him. Don't bombard him every day with that. Take account of your thoughts, and then once a week or once every other week, write them down and discuss them with your spiritual father. Discuss them with your confessor. And more than anything, continually invoke the name of Christ. Because the passions, the demons, Christ has conquered all of them. And when we constantly call upon his name for help, that's how we begin to do the same. Thank you everyone for watching. Once again, please like, share, and subscribe for more content. And I'll see you in the next one.